What's up, Alabama fans? This is Andrew Bone here with BamaInsider.com. We got a special guest on our show this evening, Chad Simmons, who is in charge of the Southeast for Rivals.com. Chad and I have known each other for a long time, and we worked together at Scout.com back in the day, and luckily we have been able to work at Rivals together for several years. And Chad, for those that don't know, does pretty much everything in the Southeast for Rivals. I mean, he is on the road every single day, just about all the video interviews that you see online, all the great photos that you see. Chad's the one that's behind the camera and does such a great job, and has broken a lot of stories on Alabama prospects for us over at Bama Insider. So honored to have you on the show today, Chad. Thank you for joining us. How you doing?
For sure, Bo. I think we've gone back a long way. Obviously, I think both of our beards have kind of aged together. We talked about that a minute ago about the gray beards going on for us.
Right.
We know, I don't know, probably 10, 12 years at least. I would say we've known maybe longer than that. But thanks for having me, man. Obviously, it's great working with you guys, you and Kyle both. I mean, you guys run a great site. So Bama is probably the best fan base, I would say, maybe in the country, most passionate fans, kind of spoiled right now on the field and in recruiting as well. So I'm happy to be here, man.
I want to ask you about a couple of kids that were stars for Alabama this past season. Guys that you're pretty familiar with, William Anderson and Brian Branch. I know you were very high on those guys coming out of high school. And William Anderson was a 5-star, and Branch was in the Rivals 100 as well. And both of those guys had a pretty significant impact on the team this season. Were you surprised by that at all?
I would say no. And I think for more than just the obvious reasons of talent, but just knowing them and covering them for 2 or 3 years, the maturity level, what they were to really accept the coaching at Alabama, to understand the schemes. That's really no surprise. I mean, Branch, extremely smart, could be all over the secondary. I think a leader in the future for Alabama at safety there, and what he does in the secondary. And William Anderson, man, he's always been about business, and I'll say this about my ranking. I obviously underranked him early. He earned that 5th star in San Antonio at the All-American Bowl, and he obviously had a huge senior season. And both those guys are great players for their position. But I think even more important is just the maturity level they went into Tuscaloosa with allowed them to be, I think, successful as true freshmen.
I think probably the biggest surprise to all of us during the season was the play of Malachi Moore. I know you had a chance to see him during his junior and senior seasons. Just talk about Malachi a little bit, and how impressed were you with how he was able to really put everything together this season?
It definitely was a surprise. That's nothing against Malachi, but for any freshman to go into Bama, especially in the secondary, and earn a starting spot, in a lot of games he played in meaningful minutes, and he matched up against some very talented receivers in the SEC. And, he came up from a great program at Hewitt Trustful, and obviously great coaching there under Coach Floyd in that program. But I did not expect him to make the impact that he made as a true freshman. We liked his size, his length, his football IQ. And again, another guy's all about the business, man, putting in the preparation off the field. But yeah, just his overall performance and the impact he made as early as he did was somewhat of a surprise.
People always ask me who's going to make the biggest impact on the team the next season. And I always, in terms of true freshmen, I always say it's got to be somebody that enrolls early. And obviously this year, it didn't really matter because kids didn't get a chance to go through spring practice and get all those reps in during the spring and be around, other teammates throughout the year until the fall. But, that's kind of the way that the recruiting landscape went this past year in this past recruiting class. You really didn't get a chance to, go out in the spring and evaluate kids at camps, at 7-on-7 events. Rivals camps are such a big part of the evaluation process, not just because it's the Rivals camps, but it's because you finally get a chance to see these kids all compete against each other. How difficult was it this past recruiting class, just evaluating kids, really in your entire region? Because it obviously was very difficult.
Yeah, it was difficult, Andrew. I mean, for sure. I mean, you're so, I think, used to seeing guys in person, not just once, but multiple times throughout the spring. Early every new year, you got the camp circuit, you have 7-on-7 circuit, you have high school spring practice, spring football games. I mean, you have so many chances to see guys go head to head or compare one to the other, one day to the next, and taking that out of the equation. I think a lot more, I don't want to say guessing, but just, watching a lot more tape and really putting more emphasis on that season and what's on film, on highlight tapes, watching full game tape and trying to figure out where to slot guys compared to taking that and then adding that to the live evals and comparing it to other guys you see, not just in the South, but in the Midwest and the West Coast and, Texas area, all that kind of stuff. I mean, it was definitely different. And I think not just for us, but for college coaches, I think there's a lot more uncertainty about this class and maybe even 2022, moving forward.
You guys do such a great job, going really all over the country and evaluating kids, and specifically you going to different high schools. Just like I said, every single day you're going to 7-on-7 events. Now you guys are seeing more kids than college coaches are seeing. Can you believe that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's frustrating for them, offering kids they've never put eyes on, especially in this class. 2021 was one thing. If you're a high-profile guy, say like a Brian Branch or even like a Kool-Aid, they saw those guys sophomore year, junior year, at least to put an eyeball test on how tall is this kid, where's his frame at, what can he be 3 or 4 years from now. But now in this class, they're kind of offering kids blind in a lot of ways, and it's taking commitments blind. They probably won't have camps this summer, on college campuses. So I think we're still getting back into the things as far as like guys like you and me. But college guys aren't going to be out on the road for any foreseeable future right now.
And for the Rivals national team, how are you guys kind of going about, the rankings? What's your process? Obviously, you guys came out with the Rivals 250 in the class of 2022 this week, but how are you guys approaching it?
Trying to be the same as we always are based on what we're able to do right now. Obviously, for us, a big thing for Rivals is, in-person evals. So, or new tape to be evaled or whatever it may be. So like from the last rankings to now this week, the majority of the guys that were significant movers per se, adding stars, losing a star, moving up significant spots have been re-evaluated, whether it be maybe from the last time we ranked players, we didn't have their film. Maybe we saw a kid in January on the camp circuit, 7-on-7 circuit. So the guys that made big moves were guys like that, So for us, we put a lot into the in-person evaluations and quote unquote new evaluations to move guys around. So a lot of guys stayed, I think, in the same spot or around the same spot. But the guys you saw make big moves were guys we either got new film on or saw in person the last 6 to 8 weeks.
Well, I want to talk about some of the 2021 guys that signed with Alabama, specifically Terrion Arnold. His recruitment came down until National Signing Day, and it was very close. And you had a really strong relationship with Terrion throughout the entire process. And I know that he confided in you a lot of information that probably wasn't public, but I know that you knew a lot about his recruitment the final days, the final weeks before he announced that decision. How difficult do you think it was for him to make that commitment? Because it was pretty close.
Yeah, I think he went through a couple of different cycles over the past 6 to 12 months. So I think, early on, maybe into his junior year, I think he probably felt a good chance he was going to stay home and go to Florida. I think he saw in-state school, what some people call DBU. They put a lot of guys in the league at his position. He had a great relationship with Torian Gray, the staff there at Florida. Then I think as things progressed through the summer into early fall, things, based on what I was told, shifted more maybe towards Georgia and Alabama, away from Florida. Florida always hung in there for sure. They were the in-state school. He knows a lot of players there, but I think Georgia had the lead based on, again, what I was told, until really that national championship game. I think, and that's just straight up coming from Terrion. He watched that game against Ohio State with Alabama. Obviously, they impressed the country, not just the fan base, but obviously recruits. And we know one game in most cases does not change a kid's mind. But I think that definitely put Bama at that point, if not ahead of Georgia late, brought them even with Georgia. In the next couple of weeks, Bama pulled ahead through conversations with Nick Saban. Obviously there was some change at Georgia, Charlton Warren leaving for Indiana, DB coach. And then also I think a key to this that wasn't talked about too much was a kid like Tyreek Stevenson leaving Georgia and transferring back to Miami, his hometown. I think that gave Terry on some questions about why is a kid like that leaving? Is it about the coaching staff? And Bama obviously has coaching changes every year, but Saban always brings in, it seems like, the right guy. And I think Bama won out late. But like you said, Bone, this thing was very close. I don't think anybody really knew 100% what was going to happen until he made that announcement on signing day. And that includes myself. And I think the coaching staffs in Athens, Tuscaloosa, and Gainesville. So this thing was really close. But Bama, in my opinion, got one of the top DBs in the country.
Yeah, talk about his skill set because, he's a tremendous athlete, also a star basketball player. But what can he do out there on the field?
There's not much he can't do. I think he's a guy that's as versatile as you have in the secondary. Could he be cornerback? Yes. Could he play that star position? Yes. Can he play free safety? Yes. To me, I think he's best long-term at safety, just, as smart as he is, getting guys lined up properly, making the calls on the back end of the secondary. But as far as skill set, super athlete, great instincts, great ball skills, can be physical, can cover. He puts himself in position to make plays. Again, I think, me getting involved in Florida, late in the process as far as the evals go, and I saw him a couple of times late in person and saw him practice, play basketball, all that kind of stuff. I think he would have been in that 5-star discussion maybe if I would have saw him earlier, which he was late too. But I think Bama is going to make him again to be maybe that next superstar DB on the back end.
Well, another superstar DB in Alabama's class is Ga'Quincy McKinstry, as everyone knows as Kool-Aid. Talk about Kool-Aid a little bit because he kind of had an interesting recruitment as well, whereas everyone thought he was an Alabama lock early on in the process. Then he kind of shifted towards Auburn, and it was certainly Auburn at one point. And I feel like he may have even told you that was where he was going to go, and then the momentum started to shift to Alabama late in the process.
Yeah, he straight up was honest with me and told me that he gave a silent to Auburn, and that was like back in mid-late August, I want to say. Mm-hmm. So early in the football season. At that time, Gus Malzahn and his staff on the Plains thought they had Kool-Aid, coming. And obviously this season did not go as planned at Auburn. They made a coaching change. But even before that, I think Kool-Aid, if I remember correctly, told me what really shifted things for him to Alabama was obviously Bama's play the first part of the season. But he told me that he watched Auburn get beat by Georgia. They played early in, I think, somewhere in September in the weird schedule this year in 2020. And seeing that and just giving him questions about where Auburn was going, as a program in the future, really kind of sealed the deal. And he knows Bama is going to be, as kids say to me all the time, Alabama is Alabama. And you know what you're going to get there under Nick Saban. There are no real questions / concerns about where Bama is going to be this year, next year. As long as Saban's there, you have the trust they're going to compete for championships year after year. So, with him, it shifted about September. He quickly backed off that silent commit, moved towards Alabama, and eventually made it public, at his high school on that Sunday afternoon in Pinson Valley.
Kids make a lot of silent commitments, don't they?
Yeah, what do they really mean? What do public commitments really mean these days? Yeah. But yeah, silent ones to me, if I was a coach, dude, if you want to commit silently, I don't even want your commitment. Just wait until you want to go public,
For the record, most coaches do not like silent commitments.
No.
I don't think people realize that. Coaches absolutely hate it for the most part. This offensive line class, not just Alabama, but nationwide, I thought was one of the deepest, most talented offensive line units that I've seen in several years. I mean, there were several 5-star offensive linemen, and the guy who ended up number one is JC Latham. Just talk about what you saw out of JC Latham to make him, the best offensive lineman in the country. And I think you could really make an argument for a few guys as the best offensive lineman. You have Marius Mims, who went to Georgia. Tommy Brockermeyer, I think he could have made a case for number one as well. All of those guys, very elite offensive linemen. But what makes JC Latham such a special talent?
I think what set him apart for me, we took a vote on this. It was down to kind of Mims, versus Latham. And I had Latham, my guy, over the last couple of ranking updates to be the top guy. And I thought he was very much in the running for the top player in the country as well, because I think just the upside. You see, he played defensive end coming out down to IMG. He's only played offensive line for a couple of years. I mean, and you see where he went from junior to senior year, and you think about where he can go from this senior year under coaching at Alabama and what they do, how they develop players, and what they have to work with. And a guy like him at his size, with his footwork, with his agility, with his frame, and just the upside. To me, I know Evan Neal is a no-brainer. I think he could have been that number one player in the country, running as well after seeing him at the Under Armour All-American game for a week, a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. Latham, to me, screams just as much, if not even more, upside than Evan did. I thought Evan came out more, he was bigger, but I think Latham has more room to develop under the coaching at Alabama as an O-lineman. And just thinking about where he can be 4 years from now, 3 years from now, 6 years from now. To me, I know, like you said, Brockermeyer was in there, Mims was in there, but to me, there was a little bit of separation for me with Latham, talking about his potential and skill set as an offensive lineman from the other guys.
Yeah, Alabama finished with a pretty historic recruiting class in terms of the rankings era, the modern rivals rankings era, the highest rated recruiting class of all time. Can you talk about just your overall thoughts about their class and how good can they really be? Because, it's tough. It's tough to say this is going to be the best class of all time. You got to go put in the work. You got to develop. You got to win games, win championships, get drafted in the first round. But just your overall impressions of this recruiting class for Alabama.
Unbelievable class. You look at it on paper, I've called it a historic class. You look at what they did, 5 stars. Averaged over 4 stars in their class from top to bottom. I think 4.04, 4.05, something like that for numerical ranking for us on Rivals. You look at how they finish, flipping a guy like JoJo Earl from LSU, Keanu Coate, from LSU, get Kamara Wheaton, late, getting Terrion Arnold. Bama just basically got who they wanted in this class. And, I'm trying to think about, you probably know more than me about, the head-to-head battles, but I don't know how many they lost in this class. I guess if you want to talk about Marius Mims a little bit. He was a Bama lean at one time, and maybe that one, maybe, but they got pretty much who they wanted nationwide, and checking every box: offense, defensive line, skill players, to what they needed in the secondary, to new offensive weapons on the wide receiver group, and the losing guys to the NFL. It's hard. You talk about, you can't really put too much expectation or say what this class is going to be or look like 2 or 3 years from now, but it's hard to bet against what Bama's doing developmentally when they get players on campus. You look at Henry Ruggs and Jerry Jeudy, Devontae Smith, and guys they put out every year, developing them to make them first-round guys. The video went around with Nick Saban talking about they have the best guys and the most guys in the NFL. That you can't argue that. And that's what Bama does. And this class is going to be another one, I think, that puts a lot of guys in that first, second, third round of the NFL draft.
And obviously it's early in this 2022 class, but some schools are already off to a pretty good start. Georgia's off to a great start. Talk about some of the schools that you feel like are off to good starts, and you can talk about Georgia as well. But who do you see doing really well this early in the process?
Yeah, I mean, I think Georgia's doing well, obviously, and it's just an odd year. Again, just with the, I think kids now more than anything are. I know it for a fact they're worried about losing their spot, as they say, because of the transfer portal. The portal has changed the game. And I don't think we see Alabama use it that much. We won't see schools like Georgia use it that much, or Ohio State. But I think Ohio State, for me, is probably the talk of the 22 class so far. What they're off doing as far as linebacker, wide receiver, what they're putting together. Of course, Georgia has, some top guys committed as well. But there's some big names coming up that I think Bama's got a good shot at. Georgia has a good shot at. And I think you'll see a lot of top guys come off the board, earlier than usual, because they want to lock in their spot, because they're worried about schools holding spots for the portal guys, whether it be post-spring, next year, whatever it may be. So for me, the top school with the most buzz right now in 2022 is Ohio State.
Well, let's talk about some of these kids that may be getting close to making a decision potentially for Alabama. And first up is Ty Simpson, who's going to be announcing his decision this Friday at 2 p.m. Central at his high school. He was supposed to announce last Friday, but decided to postpone it just because of the weather getting all the snow, and that they decided to postpone until this week. What do you think Ty's going to do, and do you have a prediction? And talk about his skill set a little bit.
Come on, man! Don't put me on the spot, Bone, like that, man.
You don't have to make a prediction.
He's like Terrion. He's like keeping all of us guessing right now, man. Like Terrion was till the end.
That's
I don't know
right.
if I can be as good as Terrion was to play in the game like that, but Ty is not far behind. As far as where he's going to end up, my gut says out of state. Whether it be Alabama or Clemson, there is some people that think he does stay in state. For me, the way I look at it is, he's made it pretty clear, I think, to most that talk to him, is that if Pruitt was still there, he's going to Tennessee. But I feel like with the timing of his announcement as far as commitment date, shortly after Pruitt was removed in Knoxville, that just tells me he shifted another way. Now, does that give Heupel enough time to get in there and work it and get him back to Tennessee? Maybe so. I'm definitely not ruling them out. He loves Tennessee. He's close to a lot of guys that they're hoping to land in state. But I do lean towards him leaving the state, at this point. But again, that's all just trying to read between the lines. And I don't have a real clear read on where he's going to end up at yet. As we record this, hopefully as we get closer to Friday, I have a little bit better feel by that time. As far as his skill set, I was able to see him right before the snow came in Martin, Tennessee. I was there as it started to sleet a little bit. I was trying to get the heck out of there before I got stuck in that small town of Martin, Tennessee, which was, there's maybe a Hardee's up there somewhere or something like that. That's about it. But I think the biggest surprise for me seeing him in person for the first time was that he looks bigger than I thought he was on tape. We had these pictures of him before I was covering Tennessee, kind of a skinny, scrawny quarterback. He was taller than I thought. He was a little bit more thicker, filled out than I thought he would be. So, I think his ceiling is up there too. He doesn't – where he's at, and that's nothing against him, there's no great competition there for him. Mm-hmm. So we want to see him in person, but I think obviously he's in the five-star discussion right now. The arm strength, his athleticism, the way he can make plays outside the pocket, throws the ball on the run. He has a short, quick, compact delivery. There's a lot to like about Ty's game, wherever he ends up at Clemson, Bama, Tennessee. The fans should be very excited. So I think it's about – seeing him in person, hopefully in the next few months, seeing him, comparing him to other guys that are already five stars for us.
Do you think it's one of those three schools, or do you think there's another school that's out there that could potentially land him?
Yeah, I don't see it happening. He still lists, Ole Miss, his grandfather played there. He lists Texas A&M. Jimbo Fisher's son plays quarterback for his father at Tennessee Martin on that. So he has that connection. Of course, Sark, wanted him at Alabama, goes to Texas, calls him really quick about giving them a look at Texas. I don't think any of those schools, you mentioned Florida along the way too, I just don't see it. I think the main three it comes down to, whether, Ty ever says this publicly, I think it comes down to Alabama, Clemson, and Tennessee.
And for the Alabama fans watching, Jay Graham, new tight ends coach in Tuscaloosa, actually coached with Ty Simpson's father for 1 year back in 2007 at UT Martin. So there's a little bit of a connection there, and I know Jay Graham has reached out to him. But one other prospect that I want to talk about that is also scheduled to make a decision here in the next couple of weeks is Emmanuel Henderson. 4-star running back in the Rivals 100 from Geneva County High School here in Alabama. He's going to be announcing his commitment on March the 13th. And I know you've had a chance to spend some time with him. Just what are your thoughts on Emmanuel Henderson? And there's been a lot of questions. Is he 100% a running back, or can he potentially play another position in college? I know he's also a standout basketball player, but do you see him as a running back? And what are your thoughts about his recruitment?
Yeah, I spent quite a bit of time at Geneva County, and they may not even have a Hardee's down there in Hartford, Alabama. They have that in Martin, Tennessee, maybe a Hardee's or McDonald's, but in Hartford, not so much. But no, I think I'll start with the skill set. From a skill set standpoint, I do not think he's 100% just a lock, straight running back. He's more of an upright runner, more of a slasher, perimeter guy, can catch the screen passes. I think he could easily be slot receiver, can do different things in the return game. I think obviously his speed is his biggest strength. He's a playmaker, his long speed. So to me, whoever gets him has a lot to work with and can use him in different roles. So he's not just 100% a running back. He's a great athlete that plays running back, puts up big numbers, scores a lot of touchdowns, makes a lot of big plays. So he's a versatile kid, though, on the next level. From a recruiting standpoint, his coach, Jim Bob Strickland, played at Auburn. People wanted to tie him to Auburn early. He grew up an Auburn fan. Auburn offered him before Alabama, Clemson, Georgia, other schools like that that are in play. But there hasn't been a lot of buzz around Auburn. It's been more buzz around Bama, even Clemson and Georgia, than there have, especially with the coaching change, even though Cadillac stayed the running back coach. Right now, based on what I've heard, it seems like it's Alabama and Georgia maybe. He's from Georgia originally, from Columbus, Georgia. So he has some ties to Georgia a little bit, but it's hard for me seeing him leave the state right now. So, Auburn's kind of maybe a sleeper school right now, but I think he was leaning that way maybe a year ago. But slowly over the past 12 months, it seems like Bama has kind of grabbed that and kind of run with it a little bit the last, I'd say, 6 to 8 months.
Another in-state player that may not be making a decision anytime soon, he had originally made a commitment, is Jeremiah Alexander. And we may see him decide between Alabama and Georgia here in the future as well, won't we?
Yeah, I think we could. I don't know when he'll pop, but I do think it probably is going to be a battle between those two schools. There's other schools that want to be in the mix too, and he can have that top 5, top 6, and all that. And he'll talk. He's an elite player. He's a guy that can do a lot from hand down, stand up linebacker. He's great off the edge. Comes from the #1 program in the state of Alabama at Thompson High School as well. But yeah, one-time Bama commit. He does like Georgia a lot. I remember when I was there the first time to see him practice, he had those Georgia gloves on. He wanted me to put that video on social media. At that time, he was, committed to Alabama. So he kind of started like a little bit of fun with the Bama fans and Georgia fans too. I do think it comes down to, those two schools in the end. And right now, I think it's probably too close to call is maybe who leads. I'll probably say if I had to pick one, maybe Georgia slight edge at this point. But again, I don't know how soon he'll commit. And I could definitely see him easily going back to Alabama.
there's a lot of really good players in the state of Alabama this year, and we see that in the Rivals 250. I mean, with guys like Amari Kelly, Shemar James, Curtis Perry, Justice Finkley. Can you see any of those guys, really moving up in the rankings over the course of the next few months, as long as you get a chance to really see them again?
Yeah, I mean, a guy I'm very intrigued by is probably Shemar James. He just did his top 8 this week. And it's going to be interesting. I think, I went and put eyeballs on him. I want to say like maybe November-ish, late 2020 when I was down in Mobile. And he's a very intriguing kid. You watch him on tape, I mean, he's all over the place, from offense to defense, moving around. He can run. He's in that 6'2", 6'3", great length. He's super athletic. He plays basketball. So to me, he's a very intriguing kid. He's almost, to me, I see his tape and then see him in person. He's like that new age linebacker that will stay on the field for three downs. He can cover. He can rush the passer. He can play the run. He'll get bigger and stronger. So to me, he's the guy that I would first come to mind and think about potential riser. Another guy I think about is Amari Kelly, from looking him at more as an athlete than just a wide receiver. I mean, he's a guy that can play safety, can play. I think when I watch his tape, I almost think he might be better at safety long term. Just his range, his ball skills, his length. So those two guys for sure, pop up. Start with Shemar James, a kid that doesn't get out much. He does play a little bit 7-on-7. So hopefully I can see him at a camp, spring practice, maybe 7-on-7 this spring to kind of get a live in-person evaluation.
Yeah, and another guy I'm really intrigued about is Antonio Kite from Anniston High School. I know you made a stop by Anniston. This is a kid who just played during his junior season. His first year playing high school football during his junior season, had a great season, picked up a lot of offers. Also has offers in basketball, has an offer from I know from Alabama in basketball as well. So he's a very intriguing prospect as well. But I know you'll be all over the state covering as well as the entire Southeast. So Chad, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I know your schedule is really busy, and we really appreciate the time. And just good luck to you the rest of the spring and summer. Hopefully, you get a chance to really go out there and evaluate some kids. And we know you do such a great job and do such a great job for us at BamaInsider.com. So Alabama fans, please be sure to give Chad a follow on social media. You'll see a ton of great content from him throughout the year, and you'll see a lot of great content on BamaInsider.com. So for Chad Simmons, I'm Andrew Bone. We'll see you next time.